Hello, hello. This is Kristina, your host today. And Today is a new episode of KSM Podcast Going Business All with Kristina. And my dear audience, I'm super happy and super excited today to have my amazing guest speaker today, lady Kimberly Haley-Coleman. And Kimberly, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Christina. I appreciate it.
I'm super happy to have you. And before we start, just like that, I wanted to say thank you so very much for joining this show today. And also, can you share about you, introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Sure. So I'm the founder, executive director slash CEO of Globalware. We do short-term service projects in 26 countries around the world. These are 1 week programs. And, it's like signing up for a cruise and except you're, signing up for a service where we're working alongside a local community to bring about some good, some sustainable project. And we're all over Latin America, Southeast Asia, the African continent, Romania, parts of Eastern Europe. But anyway, and I'm also the executive director of our industry association at the moment, which is International Volunteer Programs Association. So I've got a couple different hats I wear, but that's a little bit about what I do.
And this is very interesting, to be honest. Just imagine many hats, a few hats to do it here and here and here and globe in the globe sphere. So that's really amazing. And what can you share with us? What leads you to start this journey? What is a little bit your background and what led you where you're now today, where you're
So
today?
it really happenstance in some ways because I didn't set out to do this in my academic or corporate career, but I'd always been focused on other cultures. My MBA is in international business. I had a master's in art history. I studied various languages, things like that. I was just always focused on other cultures, but not in a nonprofit capacity. But I would find myself in other countries for my past corporate work. And after seeing the traditional tourist sites, wanted to do something else and wanting to look for ways of engaging in the local community. And at that time, I reached out to everyone I could think of, Habitat for Humanity, Engineers Without Borders, Doctors Without Borders, churches, schools, so on. And none of those groups at the time were really set up to accept short term volunteers because the amount of time it takes to oversee and supervise someone for just a short period of time is often not worth the investment. And yet I found myself thinking, it made me want to do it even more that I couldn't find. Of course, there are plenty of churches that have sister relationships with churches in other countries where they will often operate once or twice a year. There's the Peace Corps here in the United States. It's 27 months. But it was really born out of that initial frustration going, I cannot believe this is so difficult to find. And yet I think that there's a real need for someone like me to have that way of engaging with humanity in a high touch way. And even though we have certainly globalized where so many things have gone online, um, and is so much that's gone digital, it almost creates an even greater desire to have those touch points, despite the fact that we are leveraging all of the online digital um, mission driven narratives, but using all the modern tools. But anyway, that's the genesis of it.
That's great. And when you start, before you mentioned, and I asked you about background, and can you share with us maybe where was that pilot project, like a small project, and that do expanded like in globe,
Yeah. So,
in the
uh,
world, I mean.
so our first programs were Thailand, Costa Rica, and Peru. I actually was working on all three of them simultaneously. And in Peru, where in the rural communities in Cusco, right near Machu Picchu, most homes are built with earth. Think of mud or plaster style homes directly on the bare earth, and they're cooking by making a fire on the floor of their homes to cook and to boil their water. And it means they're breathing in the smoke from the house. And hygienically, it's difficult because the food is closer to the ground. And it takes a whole lot of firewood to keep the stoves, to keep the fire going, which means time looking for firewood and so on. So we started building what you think of as adobe Lorena stoves that are up off of the floor and with a metal vent pipe to pull the smoke out of the home so that you're reducing upper respiratory disease. You're taking 80% less fuel to keep that fire going and less time spent on looking for wood. So it helps with deforestation and so forth. Anyway, so that's one of the original projects we were working on, something where we were looking for how can we give back in a meaningful way that doesn't take a whole lot of time, that is helping local communities stand on their own 2 feet, where we are partners working side by side as equals alongside them. But that's an example of one of our
Yeah, this is
original
something very
projects.
interesting for our audience just to understand, to connect more with your uh, projects and to get to know more about how it looks like, how what you change with your in life with those people, you know,
Yes.
that's pretty amazing. I really what you've done, really.
Well, we're also, while we're focused on two aspects. We want to stand side by side, as I mentioned, to help people be more independent, but we're also wanting our volunteers to be more culturally aware of how different communities and cultures operate, both in terms of their strengths and any sort of challenges they have. And we're hoping that they will experience it in a way that a traditional tourist would not if they were just visiting, going to churches, museums, and restaurants, so forth. So we really have the two goals. So, on the one hand, while we are there helping the local community, it really is just as much selfishly about the joy, engagement, and outcome that happens for the person serving.
It's very interesting. And I think when you, before you go there to help them, and after that, I think that's it's such a big difference because you help them in a local community to serve more, to help them to overcome obstacles and to move forward in normal as a normal life. How can I say that?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And really with a window into a culture that usually means our local communities are so eager and warm and welcoming because they know what we're coming to do and to share laughter and a meal and an experience and music. So it means um, you're getting to see humanity from the perspective of looking at one another past a transactional way. And I remember one of the first times I ever experienced this was giving a wheelchair to a landmine victim in Cambodia. And we assemble and distribute them there. And, it's usually children who pick up landmines. And I had envisioned that giving the wheelchair to the child was going to be this ultimate moment for me, but it was actually looking at the mother of the child who, in her eyes, you could see the hopes and dreams and fears she had for her own child, even though the child, didn't necessarily envision what their future was going to look like. So I found it to be a very profound way of connecting in this very digital world we now live in.
Yeah, and when you mentioned that lady, uh, mother of that child, just imagine how she happy when she can help her child to walk, like in a way to
Yes, to
give
have
them
mobility
wheelchair
that the
mobility.
child
Yes.
was not likely to have had. And This is one of our challenges, is looking for what are the small scale projects, because these are small teams. When people sign up, they're usually not more than 10 in the group. Our coordinator is there, our bilingual staff member the whole time, shepherding our volunteers through the process. But our volunteers don't know how to do any of these projects, right? We're having to hire local expertise and our local staff members to shepherd and lead the project. And that's a really core piece of what makes it work, is the fact that these are locally driven projects done with and for the local community. And that's the foundation for everything.
And when someone, you mentioned that you are present in many countries, more than 20, I mean, globe
Yes.
aware. So when someone wanted to, from, let's say, new country or existing country, which is still present there, that they wanna to sign up for the project, what is the procedure? How that local June community can connect, or just have some need for something like that child with a wheelchair, or for that houses, or or school which needs some changes, and something like that. How who is mostly in what is category of people who how and how, what is like a process to apply for the project, that you can help them and support the project in a local community and everywhere in the world, or
So
anywhere in the
really,
world?
yeah. So really, it's funny. We get asked this all the time, which to me suggests that there's a vision and expectation that it's going to be more difficult than they think it would be, because it's like going on a cruise. Someone goes to, well, we have a huge social media presence, and podcasts and video channel and things like that. But usually they go to the website, they pick the date and the country they want to go to, and register. It's just like signing up for a cruise, and then we send all the materials, what to pack and what to expect, and then our coordinator picks up the volunteer at the meetup point, often at the airport. So it's just like signing up for a traditional travel experience. That's fully packaged, with food, accommodations, medical insurance, all of that materials. So it's really that easy. It's just going to the website and picking it out. But so many people ask us that question that, to me, it shows that people think that part is going to be the complex part. For us, the a more complex situation is when we have corporations, churches, and schools that want a specific project. So let's say, for example, we've got a company like Microsoft that wants to send 200 people to work on a special a kit some kind of project that will help kids on the spectrum or special needs children. And in that case, what we do is our coordinator works with our grassroots local organizations to see how we can help in with any of the current efforts that are already helping. So let's say, for example, there's a school that already helps kids with special needs, and they're needing a sensory room or garden, and so we will look to that. So it's those kind of cases that lead to more figuring out, okay, what are we going to do and how are we going to do this? Because for the standard volunteer, they're signing up for our pre-existing programs that are offered all year.
And Kimberly, in terms of volunteers, how a volunteer do apply? Do you go to find them in local area, or they
So
can apply globally?
no,
Go to the
no.
website and apply for that project
That's
to
what they
to
do. So
support it, like, and
that's
to
right. So
travel
people,
there in a place where they
yes.
need to support the project.
So most people know us either, through our online presence, which is a pretty big footprint, or through our past volunteers, or through any of the companies or charities or schools that have been sending volunteers with us. So word of mouth is a big piece of it. Once they know about us, we will get phone calls with people saying, "Hey, I've never volunteered with you guys before. How do I go about this? How do I choose where I want to go?" That kind of thing. But usually, once somebody's already gone on one of our programs, when they come back, they just go, and usually they pick another country and another date. And at this point, we're collecting pretty predictable data. We have to have someone's name and birth date in order to buy their medical insurance. They're putting in their payment information, but it is for Canadians and US citizens, it's a tax deductible contribution against their income. Putting in their email, any dietary restrictions, any allergies they have, things like that. So it's a pretty straightforward. We don't call it an application process because we're not choosing from the people who register. It's a registration process. And once they've registered, then we send them any other materials they need. Things like this is information about your coordinator. This is information about the project. This is what you need to pack. This is the weather to expect. Any sort of entry requirements or vaccinations. We don't work in many places that have complicated vaccine requirements or entry requirements. There are a couple of exceptions, India and Zimbabwe and so on. But usually we are able to give information that's pretty straightforward for that, so that from the volunteers' perspective, they're just learning about us online usually or calling us and then choosing where they want to go. And our volunteers, I would say 80% come from the North Americas, from either Canada or the United States, and the remaining from often Europe and Australia. But they're usually finding about us online. And they've found out about us and they start following us on Facebook or LinkedIn or our podcast, and they'll see the updated links of what we're doing, little video clips of current volunteers in the field, so that they see what to expect and know. We feel like there's a bit of a fear that first time a volunteer abroad candidates have. What are the risk factors going to be? Am I going to like the food that's there? How safe is it? Once they start to get to know us, they tend to get over that. And again, certainly once they've gone on one of our programs, they have a better sense for all of that. But that's typically how that goes, is they'll become aware of us online, and then they'll go to our website. They'll often call with questions, and then they'll just register directly. But I would say 80% are from North Americas.
It's interesting. And in terms of, I have still two questions. One is, do you have like ages, like young people? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, in fact, we have a huge percentage of our volunteers who are traveling with multi-generational, like people who will bring all of their children or a grandchild or a grandfather. So, really age 1.5 to 92. But the bigger restrictions are less about age and more about conditions. So, for example, if someone has a breathing or upper respiratory issues, then going to a place like Peru, that's in our program location, is over 10,000 feet. So they need to talk with their medical professional or doctor to see if that's appropriate for them. So our limitations have a lot more to do with the physical condition and limitations of the volunteer, more so than age.
And in terms of fees, for example, when volunteers register, with this, do they pay for that
Yes.
flying ticket?
Yes, good question that I didn't mention. Yes, so a volunteer is paying to cover their costs. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we have no other source of funds, no government or any other sorts. A volunteer is paying
in terms of accommodation as well, and also traveling fees.
Right. So when somebody pays, so let's say they're paying $1,600 for the week to Globalware, which again is a contribution that is deductible against their income, but that pays for their food, their accommodations, their bottled water, their medical insurance. It pays for the coordinator's salary. It pays for the materials for the projects. It pays for the transfers between the project location and the accommodations. It does not cover airfare. That is a for-profit business that is separately, so somebody can use miles if they want to fly to and from, or pay for it. We often are able to give some tips and tricks on what are some inexpensive ways to go about it, but that is not our core business. We are not
and you
a travel agency.
Can you just repeat how much is about to give to Global Aware that can have you mentioned 600.
So it depends on the program. They're all
Depends.
different, just like going on a cruise. Every location is different, but they're anywhere between 1,100 to our most expensive is going to be Cuba and Bhutan, which are close to 3,000 for the week. And there are all sorts of reasons those two countries are more expensive, but the average is closer to 1,600 for the week. So in line or cheaper than what most people would pay to go on a typical vacation in any of the countries where we work.
Yeah, that's very
Now they're not
interesting.
staying in, they're not at the Ritz-Carlton, right? They're going to be staying in more moderate accommodations where we do have running water and electricity and flushing toilets, all of that, but they're not fancy.
Yeah, that's good. But people are different and they wanted to experience something new. So if they are aware to, and if they wanted to volunteer, just like if you wanted
Yeah.
to volunteer to go just connect with Kimberly, she can help you just to get to know more about Global Aware and how you can support the projects or
Yeah.
however.
It's not for everyone, it really isn't, because this is for someone who's ready for an adventure, for somebody who needs to stay in a 5-star hotel every time and who is and really wants to be in chain restaurants with, that we're not that. So it is not a great fit for everyone. It's for somebody who's really ready to give back and know that they won't be they'll be safe and clean accommodations and safe project locations, but not the top of luxury by any means. And sometimes our program locations will change. We are meeting this week with the possibility of pausing our Tanzania program location due to some recent protests. So on occasion, we will have changes in where our programs are operated, but most of our program locations we've been operating in for 25 years, and those communities are used to seeing our volunteers come every other week, and our local communities are very protective of our volunteers because of the good we bring. And so it makes for a really warm and wonderful and adventurous environment to go to in a way that someone wouldn't likely do if they were traveling on their own or signing up for a traditional tour. Yeah.
It's very interesting. And when you mention, I know that this, in some way, adventure is not for everyone. When you mention this is so true. But in terms for opening new countries, maybe how is going with this? Maybe you mentioned I'm in Europe, and you mentioned that you're present in Romania. But do you plan to open many? Other countries in Europe, and what is what are the steps to go there if someone wanted to have project or to connect? Does someone can someone connect with you on a global aware from country which you are not present there or didn't do any projects
So we
before?
get contacted pretty regularly. We think several per week of communities asking if we can send volunteers to them, and that starts a process for us where we're looking at a whole set of criteria. How safe they are, if they already have an organization locally where they've identified whatever their challenges are and how they want to address them. If they've got project work that we can do that will make a meaningful impact in a culturally interesting setting. So we have a whole set of criteria. Our focus is not, I think we have 26 countries where we work right now. We are not, as a nonprofit, focused on putting more flags on a map. To us, we add a project and program when we are able to meet all of those criteria, safe, interesting, genuinely meaningful, and so forth. So it's more about that. And we do get contacted all the time. When we started our programs, we were doing a lot more proactive searching. Now it's a lot more sorting through who comes to us to see what's going to be the best fit so that we're maximizing the impact we have.
And thank you for sharing that, because the people who wanted to, you have also all those criteria. So for you who wanted to to register or to get to know more, just to go to Globalware. Just what is the website? Globalware.com.
Globalware.org. And well, we're actually everywhere. .com, .ca. Where if you look
Yeah.
up Globe Aware, a lot of people think it's global, but it's
Global
Globe
Globe.
Aware. That's what's tied to everything for us. Our podcast channel, our YouTube channel, our Facebook, our Instagram, our TikTok, our LinkedIn, our everything. So we're pretty easy to find everywhere you look, for those who are look for those specific words. And we're always happy to talk by phone for people who are just interested. And the other thing I'd like to say is we try and provide a lot of data out there for anyone interested in travel in general to those locations. So, for example, if someone's looking at how do you fill out a tourist card to go to Cuba or to get a visa to Zimbabwe and Zambia, we show people filling that out so that we're, things like that. What do the toilets look like in the northern hill tribes of Thailand? So that people are getting content that is hopefully of value to them, whether or not they are going with Globalware. So we try and be everywhere in that way.
And to help people just to open their eyes to get to know what they could expect there when they go to plan to go in Thailand or Zimbabwe or
Right.
Cuba or any country in the world. And from business to global service, I want to and how your background in international business and finance influence a growth to grow in Global Aware.
So, because I had worked in museums and studied languages and international business and so on, at the time, ostensibly there was nothing linking these things. I, as so many students from the 80s, was without knowing if you're going to be a doctor, lawyer, what have you, with a more set path, I just was following my interests. So in the end, they all dovetailed very nicely together, but it was definitely a circuitous path and not super intentional in terms of where it ended up. It just fortunately did fit together because in the sense that, we're really hoping that people learn about the local culture. And that's something that I always loved and studied, and didn't know that this was going to be how we go about doing it. And we, in the structure of our week, we are very much trying to help our volunteers, help our participants get to know the culture quickly. And in a way, again, that would be very different from a traditional experience. So that, for example, on the first day, if you're in Costa Rica, we will ask, did you know that we don't use traditional mailing addresses? In Costa Rica, you write a paragraph basically describing how to get to someone's house. It's 300 meters south of the White Church, half a kilometer coming from Cartago, that kind of thing. So that we're having these discussions and conversations designed to get our volunteers to see past that postcard view of a place. So my background, really in that sense, I guess, in terms of academically looking at international business and different cultures, perhaps is manifest in that way. And my MBA in international business in some sense, I guess. Although, really, it's a school of life where almost everything we do at this point is driven by, based on, we've had things that obviously didn't go right, and we've learned from those. We had a project in high up in the Andes Mountains where we had brought a bunch of water filters that don't work well at high altitude, and we hadn't looked into that before we started. So, we've had some stumbles, and really it's the learning on the actual experiences that have perhaps driven most of what we do. And certainly hearing back from our volunteers who bring with them their own, they'll get on location and see, hey, while we're here, why don't we buy a goal for the soccer field? Let's add benches. Why don't we do this? Why don't they come with their own very generous ideas that are often far above and beyond what we've already planned. So I have to say that our volunteers and certainly our staff coordinators that bring so much to the experience of what it is that we do.
It's very interesting, and you mentioned when you did some and tried to create something new or try to pivot something, and you said, and you can just learn from there because we don't know what is a pathway, how it's going with this, but we still learn. I mean, either that we're like in some challenges and also getting new projects, as you mentioned, with that water and filtering, whatever. So that's pretty good. So and in terms of volunteers, for example, and people who volunteer, I just wanted to ask you how they feel after, it's gonna be like advantage for them, adventure, and they go there, and do they accept that as like a trip for them to visit other countries?
Yeah. Some people call them volunteer vacations. Everyone uses a slightly different term for the service abroad, but they're usually using their vacation time. There are some employers that will give you paid volunteer time off. In other words, some employers, depending on how long you've been in a company, they'll give you however many days of traditional vacation, and then they'll give you several other days where they will pay your full salary if it's used for service. And then a growing number of employers that will do contribution matching, so that if you were to give to the Red Cross or Boy Scouts however much money, they will match it if it's a 501c3, the way Globalware is. So we're seeing lots of different ways people enable this. In the United States, there are donor advised funds, charitable foundations that will cover these funds. But yes, I think most people do think of this as just a really different, interesting vacation.
Okay,
Yeah.
and do they get back again? Like sometimes the same volunteers who maybe with that country work on and volunteering get maybe have a similar project at the same country. Did they get back or just go to the other countries? I mean,
Yeah.
about the same people.
Well, so a lot of our individual volunteers will go to a different program each time, but then we have a fair number of corporations and universities and so on that like to continue to go back to a particular location for whatever reason it might align with the mission of that program or department. So it really does depend. And then we have every now and then volunteers that will fall in love with a specific location and they just keep going back to the same one. That is not the more traditional method, though. Most people go to a different program location each time they come back. And it's very common that we have volunteers coming back over and over, but usually experiencing a different culture, different country each time.
Different
Yeah.
different stories,
Yes.
with the different people. So, and you mentioned, yeah, you in that way you work also with you're close, I think, with the universities and companies to connect to get volunteers, with working with you
Yes.
maybe
And I
in a
should say, when we
close way.
started out, it was mostly individuals just signing up, and that's still probably half of our volunteers are individuals that just pick a program and register and come on it. But then we've had this growing number because things like corporate social responsibility, which have really seen since the year 2000, have continued to grow. And various universities, global service abroad programs continue to grow. We're in a bit of a correction at the moment, if you call it that. I don't know that that's the right word, but there are universities cutting back on some of those extras due to a lot of things happening in terms of funding these days. So some of that's still changing, but we do have quite a few companies and schools where we're working with the same groups year over year. Yeah.
But this is such a this is such a big, such a huge experience, you know, you have. It's very fluent, you know, in flow business, like that you
Yes,
have.
it absolutely is. I mean, we love what we do, and it's obviously the volunteers sharing their experiences with us and sharing their own experiences. You know, this is one of the beauties of social media is that when you have these wonderful experiences, being able to share them with others to show them it's not scary. And it really is a beautiful way to experience life. And again, touching joy in such a deep, huge way that is difficult to experience in a traditional, competitive, corporate office environment. And this really is outside of that. And again, really gives you this touch point to humanity that is can be very difficult to experience other ways, and particularly in traditional day-to-day life.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. So, in that way, you mentioned that volunteers just have some kind of to share their experience and their testimonial. And however, you run your podcast. Please, can you share with us about it? Like, who are mostly speakers on your podcast, either in terms of globe aware, and also are there volunteers or uh, pro- project managers, whoever. I just like to share with us because you are
Sure.
so
So we really,
experienced in hosting that
we
way.
really have a range. So um, some of our podcasts are where we go through for a specific program the orientation materials. So if somebody doesn't want to read the PDF file that we send, they can listen to it while they're driving or exercising or cleaning so that they know what to pack, what to expect, what is the project like, what is the weather like. So that is one of our podcast content. Then we have interviews with returned volunteers. We have interviews with our coordination staff so that people can hear from them. And then we also have podcasts where we will discuss tips and tricks about a specific place or about, you know, what does your credit card cover in terms of liability. So we really have a whole range of podcast content, even things like how to maximize charitable contributions involving serving abroad, things like that. So, really, we have a huge spectrum of podcast content. And I would say our YouTube content as well. Our YouTube content will often have, in addition, very small little clippets in addition to the bigger ones. So, in the instance I was mentioning before, if somebody wants to see a little video of what do the toilets look like in Cuba, that just takes 20 seconds to see that, you know. So, but our podcast content is really covers a very broad spectrum.
And also people and listeners can find you on YouTube, Globe Aware, and
Yes, Global
also
Aware
on your website also you
and our
have.
website on anywhere people get their podcasts, you know, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, all of those. And I'm sure I'm leaving out some of the social media because it's some of it's social media I don't personally use a lot, like TikTok, but that we have. So yeah, so we're really everywhere that people might look online.
Yeah, and when you mention that you use a lot of digital tools for in terms of digital marketing and an online space to work in that way also, just that
That's
people
right.
can, that you are present in in
Yeah,
global
but
space, I
really an
mean.
online, you know, while we have these relationships on the ground, of course, we really have an online driven infrastructure in terms of our communication with our volunteers. It's so much that's digital. And our topics, of course, range from, you know, philanthropy to conscious capitalism to, I mean, really, it's all everything. It's a huge
And this
spectrum.
is the way how we connected, like that
That's right.
listen the podcast with my guest speaker, and you can say, okay, we can connect, and we can do show today like that, as we are doing now. Like this is the beauty of online space. I mean, and
That's
digital
right.
tools for digital
That's right.
um, marketing. But without that, people either they work offline, they need to be present online. What I do as a coach in my area, like digital marketing on in terms to build online presence, how to be build not as a salesperson, just like how to be present online. And you have also your blog as well, I
Yes,
suppose.
we have it. It's actually volunteervacations.com or .org. Yes, we do.
Yeah, that's good. And I have many questions for you. And I wanted to ask you, what are some of the biggest challenges you've faced leading GlobalWare?
Yeah, I would say,
And what
well,
lesson did you learn, for example?
mhm.
That will be like an
So
just to
we've had, of course, many, but the pandemic was certainly one where we had borders closed to us. That was extremely difficult in terms of testing required in both directions for COVID. And then we've had really the biggest ongoing one are cultural differences, trying to balance the expectations of our volunteers and of the local communities so that we're coming together in some good common place. Because in our case, so many of our volunteers that come from a culture that focuses first and foremost on, often without thinking of it, productivity. And in many of the communities where we work, being focused on less on productivity and more on a human element. So if you've got a local community that has a different high level goal than our volunteers, in order to keep everybody happy, we really have to set expectations on both sides and meet in the middle somewhere so that everyone's happy. And then we've also had challenges that whether it's projects that didn't go as we thought they would, so we had to learn a better way to do it, or where we've had various geopolitical, like we had for the first time, I mean, we've been there 25 years, but for 2 months ago, we had a group in Cusco, Peru, on the day they had a demonstration, a protest that cut the railroads to Machu Picchu on the day they were going to Machu Picchu. And it's the first time we've had that happen. So we really have had some unexpected challenges. But it always gives us a much better idea of what to do going forward to try and help and prepare and make sure and get so much of addressing challenges for us is setting expectations for people, so they know what they're getting into and if they're ready for it, and being as clear and transparent as we possibly can about all of that. But yeah, we've had lots of
and
challenges.
you can always like you can always find a way to resolve it and to get new ideas how to overcome obstacles and challenges.
Yeah. And well, in the case where, with the pandemic closed our programs for, almost a year in most places. Mexico never closed, but, we shifted to online virtual programming. Um, there were things that we really had to do in a different way, and we had to postpone a lot of our programs. So, um, yeah, I feel like we did learn a lot from the pandemic, but I tell you, it wasn't. It was the biggest challenge we've had by far, by
And
far.
tell me, when you mentioned that you put something in online space. For example,
We
for
did.
me, I'm 15 years in online space, now 16. So like in that time, there are different people who have supported to go online, because people are like in stuck to go online, to go on a Zoom, to go on any kind of meeting, there are different people. But what I wanted to ask you is that when you like try something like a pivoting something, many people do do that kind of journey just to move in online space, and they just keep it up. So do you, from that experience, do you keep something still in online world? Like
Well,
what you pivoted in that time, and that see that you can go like this in online space from
what we've
your
kept from
part.
the pandemic period is um, a much greater comfort level with video meetings. This is something that is now part of our regular everyday everything, as it is probably for many people. But one thing that we did do at that time that we no longer do are virtual experiences. So, for example, when people couldn't go to our Costa Rica program, for example, we would charge, and I don't remember what it was, but something like $45 per person to participate in an online, how to make the local tortillas or how to make the local coffee and so on, so that we still had a funding source to give the local communities, but it was virtual. But we don't do that any longer. We really don't have the need to do that, but it was what it's what the times required. Boy, it was, like I said, it was no easy feat getting through the pandemic.
Yeah, but the best way is when you're physical present there. I mean,
Yeah,
physically,
for
like,
sure.
yeah, but also you can just use something from that online space just to spread and have bigger package in terms to have meetings or just that someone can learn
Sure.
online. So this is much more valued. I mean, this is
That's for
something what
sure.
we've learned, all of us,
That's right.
in that period of time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah, it's very interesting, but I think that there are people who starting more to go online, especially when they have networking, either what kind of communities, so when people cannot just come to, or they can learn something, however. So I think that is positive side of it, not just
Yes, I
negative.
agree.
And also, what is your impact and vision? What do you hope that global aware will achieve in the next few years?
What I'd really hope is I'd love to have more employers that are in ascendant industries uh, embrace international service as part of their corporate international responsibility. We have a whole lot of employers that do this, but we don't have, whether it's AI companies, crypto companies, and so forth. These are companies that are having a large carbon footprint, and as does volunteering when you get on an airplane. So acknowledging that if we aren't able to directly get rid of that, if people with resources they're going to continue to get on an airplane to have an experience, is there a way they can do it in an ethical, cultural, socially interesting way that really leaves behind a great impact and means that the returning volunteers come back with this greater empathy and greater global citizenship mindset? And so that's what I would hope for as the new industries emerge and strengthen. I would say that would be one of our, much more so even than having new and more countries, because we already do operate in so many countries. So to the extent that we add countries, we're certainly happy to do that. But it's not the leading edge of our goals.
That's good. So yeah, and I will share all your links below this episode. So globalware.com and all those, so I will share all links, your podcast. If you have some kind of
Thank
freebie
you.
for our listeners, we can also share it, or for free consultation, and tell me, before we close our call today, what will be some message for all listeners, or some people who maybe is juggling with to volunteer, or what you can recommend them, how you can just encourage them to be volunteer or have some programs just for them to connect with you and to be a part of your big worldwide community.
Yeah, really to start by being led by joy and not fear, because this kind of experience, while many people worry about whatever risks are associated with it, our organization wouldn't have survived for this long if people weren't having joyful experiences. And we know that people worry about risk and food and medical care and all that. So we have set up our projects and programs with that in mind, so that fear is hopefully something that I would urge people first and foremost to look past that initial hesitation, and really, whether or not it's with GlobalWare or with a church or community center or anything else, that to really be led by that joy and adventure that makes an experience so meaningful. Yeah.
That's good. So, and if you wanted just to have some kind of adventure or wanted to be a volunteer, just please connect with Kimberly or go to her website, globeaware.com, and I will share, as I said, so you can read a lot, and to get to know more. Maybe you can visit your dream country, who knows? And I'm thinking about me also to visit some countries and maybe just to connect with you, to travel somewhere in person, not just only online. Either that I'm travel around the world in front of my computer, but I would love much more to travel in person. And I like volunteer work, to be all my life I was a volunteer in my country here, so that's pretty good. Uh, Thank you. What can I say to you? If you have final words, I'm here just to share with you. And
We're here to answer questions and chat with people that aren't sure if this is for them, to discuss through what would be worth looking into, because we talk to people all the time about that. And we love chatting about what we do. So whether it's via email, or we've got various phone numbers on our website, depending on where people are calling from, we love to have those chats. So don't hesitate to reach out if you're just curious, because that's what we do. We talk about that all day, every day.
yeah, thank you so very much, Kimberly, for joining our show today. It was such a pleasure having you, and it's such a great experience for me. It's a new story, it's a new guest speakers, it's a new industry. You're like there with different consultants, managers, healers, and all. But your business is very interesting and you cover 25 countries and very interesting. Like what you do, like helping people, doing some small projects and other things. Uh, Kimberly, thank you so very much, and I will have you again on my podcast. I really appreciate your time, and I really enjoyed our conversation,
Likewise.
talk today. Thank you so very
Thank you,
much.
Kristina. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to chat.
Thank you so very much for joining, and bye for now. See you next year.
Bye,
Bye.
Kristina.